Okay, so maybe you're thinking about checking out the Dragonet Prophecy. It's the first book in that Wings of Fire series by Tui T. Sutherland, and it's popular. But is it, like, actually good?
Yeah.
Worth the whole series commitment?
Well, I can tell you right off the bat, it's a solid yes from me, especially if you're into classic fantasy, or maybe you know a younger reader who is, but with a fun dragon twist.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today. We're going to break down what works, maybe what doesn't work, and help you figure out if Wings of Fire is the dragon adventure you've been looking for.
The first thing that really struck me was how in-depth the world building is. It's not just like dragons in our world, it's like fully dragon-centric.
Okay.
You've got all these distinct tribes, MudWings, Seawings, Skywings, and they each have their own culture, look, even like abilities based on their element. It's really well done.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see how that would appeal to fantasy fans. World building is key, especially with, dragons. But let's get into the plot itself. We've got this prophecy, 5 dragonets destined to end a 20-year war. Is it like a straight-up chosen one kind of story? Because those can be, a little predictable.
It does start with that framework, but Sutherland makes it more interesting. The dragonets, they can actually choose to defy the prophecy,
Oh, interesting.
which adds this whole layer of tension because their choices really do matter.
Okay, I like that. That's a good twist.
Yeah.
It's always more interesting when the characters have agency, right? Keeps you guessing. Speaking of characters, we spent a lot of the book with Clay, right? The MudWing.
Exactly. He's our main viewpoint character, and he's definitely your classic good guy, loyal, kind, puts his friends first, always. Maybe even a little too good, some might say.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. Could be a little too sweet for some readers. Does he ever feel, like he needs a little bit more edge?
There are definitely times where his constant goodness feels a bit one-dimensional, but I think Sutherland uses that to show how hard it can be to stay good when you're surrounded by war and all that. It's not just assumed, it's something he struggles with.
Okay.
And then you've got the other dragonets who bring different personalities to the group.
Right. Makes sense.
Tsunomi's got that fierce, independent thing going on, and Glory's more sarcastic, observant. Their interactions kind of balance things out.
Yeah, a good ensemble cast can definitely make a story better. But I got to ask about something that jumped out at me from the reviews, the violence. Apparently it gets pretty intense, especially for a book marketed as middle grade. How graphic are we talking?
Yeah, it's definitely more violent than you might expect. You see battles, characters get hurt, some even die. Sutherland doesn't shy away from how brutal war can be, even though it's from a dragon's point of view.
Wow.
There's even this one scene, a dragon clutching at the blood pouring from its neck. It's pretty vivid.
Whoa. Okay, yeah, that is intense. I can see why some parents might be hesitant. Do you think it's handled well? Or does it ever feel like too much?
I think it's well balanced. It's never super graphic or anything, and it shows how high the stakes are in this war. But yeah, something to keep in mind if you're thinking about this book for a younger reader.
Definitely good to know. Okay, so we've got dragons, a prophecy, a likable, maybe too likable, main character, and a good amount of violence. What about the writing itself? Is it engaging, fast-paced?
One of the things I really liked was the pacing. Sutherland keeps things moving, short chapters, lots of action. You're always turning the page to see what happens next.
But does it ever feel like too much action? I like a fast-paced story, but sometimes it feels like there's not enough character development or, like, emotional depth.
I don't think that's the case here. There's plenty of action, yeah, but Sutherland takes the time to develop the characters and how they relate to each other. You see them bonding, arguing, supporting each other, and it feels real.
Okay, good, good. Sounds like a good balance. But
Yeah.
how would you compare the Dragonet Prophecy to other middle-grade fantasy books? Any that come to mind?
It reminded me a bit of Aaron Hunter's Warriors series.
Oh, yeah.
Similar writing style and those themes of loyalty and friendship, but Wings of Fire is definitely more complex and a little darker. It also had some things in common with, like, Harry Potter,
Interesting.
especially with the chosen one thing and how they explore their magical abilities.
So, familiar elements,
Mhm.
but with its own twist.
Mhm.
Okay, starting to get a picture of what this book is all about. But how does it stack up against those other big series?
You know, I think one of the things that makes Wings of Fire stand out is its focus on political intrigue.
Mm.
We see the war from the point of view of different dragon tribes, each with their own goals and motivations. Adds a complexity that you don't always see in middle grade fantasy.
I can see how that would make it more interesting, but could it also be a little much for younger readers?
It's definitely a dense book, yeah, a lot of information,
Yeah.
but Sutherland does a great job of weaving it all into the story so it never feels like, just a big info dump.
It's good.
Ah.
I'm not a fan of those. So we've covered world building, characters, pacing, even the violence. What's your final verdict? Would you recommend The Dragonet Prophecy?
Absolutely. It's a really fun read, keeps you engaged, and the characters, they really grow on you. And even though it deals with war and violence and stuff, there's this underlying sense of hope that kind of shines through.
That's good. I like a little bit of heart, even with the dragon battles and all. But you mentioned the characters growing on you, so does that mean they're not, like, immediately lovable? Do they have flaws? Because perfect characters, they can be kind of boring.
Oh, they definitely have flaws, yeah. Clay, he means well, but he can be kind of naive, a little too trusting, maybe. Tsunami, she has a temper, can be impulsive. And Glory, she's clever, but she's also pretty cynical and doesn't really open up to others easily. Having those flaws makes them feel more real, and you feel like their growth throughout the story is earned.
Okay, now that's what I like to hear. Characters with some depth, some inner conflict. It sounds like Sutherland doesn't shy away from letting them struggle a bit. But with all this political intrigue and character development, does it ever slow down the story? I mean, I like nuance, but I also want to be hooked.
No, don't worry. The pacing stays pretty quick the whole time. Sutherland knows how to keep the story moving forward, even when she's going into those deeper themes or character moments. There's a good balance between action, intrigue, and those emotional beats.
You're making me want to read this book.
Eh.
But I got to ask, are there any slow parts? Every book has them, even the good ones.
There are maybe a couple of scenes that feel a bit slower, especially when Sutherland's setting up the world's magic system or explaining the history of the war. But she does it in a way that feels natural to the story. It's like you learn through the dialogue and the interactions, not just big chunks of
Yeah,
exposition.
I hate those. I don't want a book to just stump to give me all the background.
Right.
So it's engaging, well-paced, flawed characters that you actually care about. But is it just a fun adventure? Or is there something like deeper going on?
Oh, there's definitely something deeper going on for sure. It explores all these themes like destiny versus free will, the nature of good and evil, the importance of friendship and loyalty. It asks questions about war, what are the consequences, and about finding your place in the world. And it does it all through these dragon characters, which is really interesting.
Those are some pretty big themes, especially for middle grade.
Mm.
You think Sutherland handles them well? Or does it ever feel preachy or, too
Yeah.
simplified?
No, not at all. She really weaves those themes into the story so naturally that you can draw your own conclusions. The characters are the ones grappling with these questions, through what they do and what they say. So it feels like part of their journey, not like a lesson being forced on you.
Yeah, I'm always impressed when an author can handle those complex issues and still keep the story entertaining. But let's get back to those comparisons. You were saying it reminded you of Warriors and Harry Potter.
Right, Warriors because of the animal protagonist and how it explores those complex social structures. But Wings of Fire goes further with a more developed magic system and the political intrigue I mentioned.
Okay, and Harry Potter. I get the chosen one thing, but what else is similar?
Well, like Harry Potter, Wings of Fire really highlights the power of friendship and standing up for what's right, even when it seems impossible. There's also that sense of wonder and discovery as the characters are learning about the world and their own abilities, kind of like Harry at Hogwarts.
So it's inspired by those popular books, but still does its own thing.
Exactly. Familiar but fresh. It's got those elements that fans of classic fantasy will like, but it also brings something new.
You're really painting a picture here. We've got dynamic characters, fast-paced plot, thought-provoking themes, all in this world of dragons and magic. Sounds pretty compelling.
Oh, it is. And one of the things I really enjoyed is Sutherland's writing style.
Mm-hmm.
It's very clear, engaging, and there's a lot of humor, too. She doesn't hold back on the imagery and description. You really feel like you're in that world.
Yeah, I love that when an author can make you actually see the world. But how does the humor work when you've got these serious themes like war and loss?
It's woven in really well, those light moments and that wit. It gives you a break from the heavier parts, but it doesn't, take away from the impact of the story.
That's a tough balance to get right. Sounds like she nails it.
She does. It never feels forced or out of place. It fits the characters and how they talk to each other. Just adds another layer of enjoyment, really.
You've sold me. I'm adding Wings of Fire to my list. But what about our listener who's still not sure? What's that final thing you'd say to convince them to check out this dragon world?
If you're looking to, really escape and have some feels, the Dragon Prophecy does that. But it's also smart, you know? The world is so well developed, it doesn't treat the reader like a kid.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned before this is just the first book in a bigger series. So for readers who get hooked, what can they expect from the Wings of Fire saga overall?
Well, the main series has this pattern where each book focuses on a different one of those dragonets of destiny.
Oh, cool.
So you get to see the world through each of their eyes, their own problems, how they deal with that prophecy hanging over them.
That's a cool way to keep it interesting. So is each book like totally separate, or is there
Mm.
one big plot going on through the whole thing?
It's both. Each book has its own story, but they all connect back to this bigger picture about the war, the history of the dragon tribes, and all those mysteries around the prophecy. It's
Oh,
kind of like a big puzzle you're putting together one book at a time.
I like that. Keeps you invested for the long haul. But if each book has a different dragonet, do we lose Clay? You know, the one we've spent the whole first book with.
No, they're all still connected throughout the series. They go through stuff together. Their relationships change. They learn to depend on each other. You know, it's a real team effort.
Good, good. Didn't want to say goodbye to him after just one book. But is there anything else that makes Wings of Fire special as a whole series? Besides the, awesome dragons.
One thing I really like is how Sutherland tackles those like tougher, more grown-up themes. But it's never preachy, you know. We see how war affects everyone, how characters deal with grief and, even trauma. They make hard decisions and those decisions have real results. It's a series that doesn't talk down to its readers. It gets that they can handle those big emotions.
Well, I like books that challenge me a bit, even if they're, in the middle grade section. But does it ever get too dark? Like overwhelming?
There are some dark parts, for sure. The series doesn't shy away from showing what conflict can cost, but Sutherland always balances it out with hope, with characters showing how strong they are. They lean on each other, and they never give up on trying to make things better.
Okay, that's good. I like some grit, but I don't want to be totally bummed out by the end. Haha.
Exactly, and there's always that sense of adventure, of wonder. Even when things are tough, there's this excitement about exploring new places, uncovering secrets, and seeing what the characters are really capable of.
It sounds like Sutherland made something really great with Wings of Fire. It's more than just dragons. It's about friendship, courage, and figuring out where you fit in a world that's kind of messy.
I agree totally. It's a series with something for everyone, whether you're new to fantasy or, coming back to it as an adult and looking for something different.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about. We've covered the world, the characters, the themes, even where the Wings of Fire saga goes from here.
And hopefully we've made them curious enough to give the Dragonet prophecy a shot. Who knows? Maybe this deep dive will be the start of their own, epic dragon journey.
On that note, we'll leave you with one last thing to ponder. If you were in this world, what kind of dragon would you be? What choices would you make if you were the one facing that prophecy? Happy reading, everyone.
Hi.